It started with the love story of a girl and a boy. And then the scene twists to the plane explosion, and yet the kissing still continued between these guys, but that was actually just a manga our female lead Izumo Fuko was reading. She started to envy the story since her life wasn't like that at all, because it's time she decided to kill herself from that suicide, but a voice from behind stopped her from taking that misstep. So Fuko tells the guy that she has a cursed body and that's why she wants to die. She drew out her legendary sword to threaten the guy from saving her, but dude doesn't care about that. So Fuko warns him not to touch her or he would face an unforeseen death from a disease, but dude still doesn't care about her threat, so while Fuko was still bent on dying, the guy gets near her and stabbed himself from that knife, which gives Fuko a near heart attack, but dude showed that he's totally fine. In fact, Andy wants to see that what she told him about the deadly disease he would get from touching her is real or not. But nothing happened and Andy thought how funny the suicide has become for youngsters these days that they make up these weird reasons to die, but still Andy was still curious where he would get hurt. Upper or his lower body, but surprisingly, he lost his whole body from that train hit to let him feel anything, and once again, someone died right after touching Fuko. But then, Andy's head makes a comeback from the bottom of the bridge, but surprisingly bro was actually excited he met a chick with a weird unluck disease that causes death. There his head started to rebuild his entire body structure on its own like Deadpool, but rather way faster than him, but witnessing that sight, Fuko was like having heebie-jeebies from within her body. Well, his undead body didn't give Fuko a high shock, but actually his big magnum gave her the real shockers that she punched his little guy with a knockout punch, and tries to run out like crazy from that creep. But Andy didn't want to let her go that easily and grabbed the girl to ask her about her unluck, but there were some uninvited guests approaching them. So Andy takes off from his blood jests to find a suitable place for a talk. They lands on a random building but Fuko was going to die from the heart attack once again. So she wanted to bail out but Andy was still interested on her unluck, and now since he touched her yet again, Andy is in for another death once more, but bro found a loophole in her power. Which is, if he touched her with his clothes on, the unluck won't get activated. There, Fuko was still trying to get away from him, so Andy tried to scare her. But Fuko didn't care since she was prepared to die anyway, so Andy gives her a nice roly-poly in that edgy wall of that building, and that did the trick and Fuko agreed to talk. Well, she started from her past when she was only 8, her parents were about to go off on a business trip and she was seeing her folks off from an airport. But her parents' plane got exploded due to an engine fault and her folks died, and after that anyone who touched her kept dying and she found out about her cursed power that brings death. But anyways, that was the gist of her powers, so Andy grabs her with a skin touch this time to get her unluck, and right after that a freaking banana box becomes a reason for Andy's death. So Fuko took this chance to get away, but still, Andy isn't undead, but Fuko isn't, so it took only one banana, just one, which becomes the reason for her death. So while she was falling down, she gets a bit scared but gets calm since she wanted to die anyway, but Andy doesn't want to see her leave that easily, because she's the only one Andy was searching for his whole life who could give him a real death. So Andy flew off with her to take her back to his place, but some shady men in black saw them. And then, Andy was curious how much unluck would develop after touching her for minutes or an hour, so he told Fuko to get naked so that he could touch her to make a bigger unluck. But Fuko runs out from this creep as fast as she could, so once again they started the game of Tom and Jerry in that place, but her jacket got stuck and her gorgeous long hair got revealed. But suddenly, Fuko cried out since she thinks her hair is ugly, and any barber who tried to cut it died out. Honestly, personally I think she looks superb even with those long hair. But Andy saw that she was really sad this time, so he brings out his tools and gave a nice trimming to her hair. Long hair was nice and all, but short-haired Fuko isn't bad either. Fuko got happy for a first time in a while that she didn't realize that Andy touched her for 15 minutes, and the effect showed its brutality right off the bat as those men in black showed up. He grabs Andy and keeps him in a special capsule, and took Fuko under them. Their main framework is to deal with the persons like her and Andy who had weird ability that could disrupt the balance. But this guy knows the loophole of Fuko's ability and touched her with those gloves on, so he wants to use her for assassination and told Fuko that Andy also caught her for the very same reason. But she knew even with just a little bit of time that Andy wasn't like that, and right after that, the stroke of unluck from 15 minutes brought the thunder to Andy and the person holding onto him gets fried as well, but it's good anyway since he got free from that capsule, and right after that, The obvious happens with the bad guys, but the leader threatened Andy with Fuko's life and told him to cut off his head and put it back into that capsule. Fuko tells Andy not to worry about her, but Andy cuts himself off without a single thought. But Fuko didn't want to end things this way and escaped from that man, and since her hands were tied up she kisses Andy for the skin touch, so, with that kiss something was bound to happen. Like real bad, so Fuko runs out from there, to save herself first while Andy takes care of the rest, but that one darn kiss. Just one kiss brought down a meteor from the sky which destroyed that whole place, but nothing could happen to Andy since he's an undead, but, right here, personally, I had the same thought that Andy had. That is, if just a single kiss could bring a boulder from space, then what could happen if they go all the way in bed? But Fuko doesn't want to find out that answer and runs away as fast as she could, and just like that the game of Tom and Jerry once again starts between them. So after that kiss, Andy decided to have a masterstroke of unluck by getting down to some real adult business, so Fuko made up her own theory that just sleeping with her unluck won't give him the death effect he wants. Her unluck always depends on her feeling, so the more she loves a person the more unluck gets to them. Well, hearing this, Andy made a clear plan to make her fall in love with him, but before that, her own safety comes first. So Andy armed her for her own safety because those guys from earlier would show up again. They are called negates of the Union and Andy was once a lab rat for them for 10 years. So he tells Fuko that they would go to some extreme measures to find her unluck powers, so Andy and Fuko hits the road to change their location, and in the meantime, Andy planned to make Fuko love him, but unfortunately, they were discovered again by those folks from the Union. One of them took out Andy and another one immobilized Fuko's every move, but then Andy got back up to attack the armor, but he also fell immobilized, so the armor took the chance to clean his hands on him, and after which Andy was able to move, so Andy figured out his ability. It's restraint type negators, so now Andy goes for a brawl with the big guy, and seeing him fight Fuko was concerned if they will be chased like this forever, so Shin tells her that when she brought down that meteor their captured priority was increased to level 8. They work under the association named Union that has 10 members with powerful abilities that deals with other troublesome people with power. So Fuko thought she and Andy could join, but there are only 10 seats for negators, and Andy heard and liked the idea, and before that happens Andy promised he won't let Fuko die. Fuko got shy and touched Andy for the unluck, and this time she felt real love for Andy, which brings out another stroke of unluck, an oil truck, but it wasn't enough to cause any death. And while flying away from them, Andy knew that big guy has the ability of unavoidable, which makes his target immobilized, so while planning to deal with them, the building he was in was also registered for demolition. And that happened quickly, so the armored guy realized it was Fuko's handiwork, so he wanted to kill her first, but Andy breaks in first and uses his finger as a bullet to kill the guy. So it was time for Shin to die, but every attack Andy wanted to land he unknowingly landed a different attack. Shin explains that it's power that changes his target's decision. So the attack Andy wants to land won't land as he decides, but then Fuko comes there with a katana and gave it to Andy, but when Andy got the chance he hesitated to kill Shin. So Fuko then tries to touch Shin but fails instantly, so now Shin asked who would join Union since the armor guy is dead. Andy picked Fuko and told Shin he's willing to surrender. But Fuko didn't want to accept that and told Shin to look away because she is about to do some real X-rated stuff for an extreme unluck just to save Andy. Her move impressed Shin so much that he decided to spare them and told them to kill another member of the Union, who's gonna come out at Lake Baikal in 3 days. After that info Shin leaves and now they have to travel all the way to Russia to kill this member in Irkutsk state, and their Andy planned to hire his old war buddies for help in combats. So they started traveling around in a yacht. But Fuko was still feeling cold because there would be more killers who would come after them, but Andy tells her to enjoy it while she can. And right then they were spotted again, but this time by a warplane, so Andy cut off his hand and used it to crash that thing down, so Fuko thought they'd now join the Union. So Andy enlightens her that they need to kill one of the 10 negators, 3 of whom are the most troublesome, but the third is extreme. She can make an invisible shield, through which she packed Andy for 10 years for experiments. But Andy doesn't care about that, all he knows is that he wants to kill one of them, and the race will be Fuko's unluck. And right then a satellite attack from space busted their yacht down, and Fuko got buried under the scraps on bottom of the ocean, so Andy took her out of there and saved her life. But their time was already up as they were discovered, but they won't be caught because Andy got a real fell of Fuko's chest while he was giving her a CPR. Then a blast placed them on top of that plane and they kicked out the pilot from the cockpit, so Andy was curious to find the contact level of Fuko's unluck level to trigger it. Because her unluck will be the best trump card for them to defeat this Union member. With that, they got a nice way to travel to Russia, but just as they got near the land, the plan was about to self-destruct, because the Union realized Andy had swiped the plane off, so they landed a rough landing on the ground from that height. But they still arrived on their destination on Lake Baikal, and seeing it, Fuko was mesmerized because it was her first time overseas. So Andy told her to do some sightseeing while he contacts his buddies, but Fuko asks if the person they were about to kill turns out to be a reasonable person, but Andy tells her he doesn't care. But aside from that, he asked Fuko about any food she doesn't like, because the person Andy is bringing runs a nice restaurant, which has a killing taste on his every food. So while he arranges that, he tells Fuko to have some fun time and leaves, but Fuko was still embarrassed around so many people for the first time, and while running away from them, she runs into a girl who's been painting around the shore, and she turned out to be a Japanese fangirl. Then Fuko saw her painting and it was really pretty, so Gina asked Fuko if she likes to paint, so Fuko tells her she was a shut-in, so she did a bit painting. So Gina likes the idea and tells Fuko to paint with her. So Fuko started to relax a bit around until Andy arrived, and there Gina asks Fuko if she likes something that changes or something that never changes, because she likes things that never changes. Like the painting that captures the moment of a scene and never changes, but Fuko wanted to think about her answer a bit, and just like that, time passed out and she finished her painting. She showed it to Gina and Gina lost words for the painting. She asked Fuko about the sparkles she made around the moon, so Fuko told her that there's nothing in space except the moon and sun. So the moon looked lonely up there, so she gave him some friends, and after thinking that, Fuko answered she met Andy just 4 days ago, and before that her life was always the same. But now her life has been turned upside down, and now she's in Russia in just 4 days. Gina found her words very lovely but naive. She then suddenly lifts up the lake under her feet and Andy comes out running to kill Gina, because she's the chick Andy finds the most troublesome, the chick with the invisible barrier power. But Gina knows that Andy wants to kill her to join the Union. But that's where episode 3 ends. If you want to see more of this anime, leave a comment in the section below. But until then, stay safe.